Here we are. Welcome to Marketing in the Digital Privacy Era session for Universe. A couple of things before we jump in here. A couple of announcements. There's gifts awaiting you. We'd love to see everybody participate in the session. We'll be giving out prizes and things like that for the most engaged people in the event platform, poll responses, session chats. And so please interact with the session as much as possible. Q&A, there's a session chat, ask any questions. We'll be able to answer as many as possible. After this, the fireside chat with author Jay Baer. We're looking forward to that. That's at 3:35 p.m. All right, so I'm going to introduce who we've got here today joining us. We've got Andrea Migdal, who's the GC of 6sense. 6sense is a great partner of Alice's and a customer as well, and we'll talk a little more about Andrea's role there too in a few minutes. We're also joined by Kathleen Patton, who is the general counsel of CarGurus, who I've known for a few years here in Boston. And then I'm also joined by Pedro Pavone, who is Global Policy Director, Monetization, Privacy, and Fairness at Facebook. That's a long title, but Pedro and I are partners in crime on a podcast called the Data Protection Breakfast Club, where we talk to a bunch of privacy folks, GCs, lawyers, all about privacy issues, advertising, marketing, and things of that nature. So we're here to have a conversation about privacy, legal issues, digital marketing, and all sort of related things there. So I'm gonna lose the slides here so we can just have a conversation and stop sharing. Everybody can see each other. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody so much for being here together. I think, let me start with you, Kathleen. Both in different companies, and I guess I want to get a sense maybe from you, what have your interactions been like with the marketing teams, and has that changed over time in your experience?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been at several companies in-house now. And, originally it was just about, hey, can we put out this press release? Can we put out this, how would this brand campaign work, right? So very high level stuff, sort of more strategic than particularly legal in nature, except in regards to protecting our trademarks, those sorts of things like trademark protection guidelines. Now it's much more critical and sort of business critical and more day to day as well. So the real question is, hey, we've got this huge collection of consumer data and we could do so many cool things with it. And Kathleen, is it okay if we do all of them? Right? And so, of course, my teams are savvy enough to know now that they can't do everything they want to with the data, but it's getting trickier and trickier when you think of all the different places where your data is coming from and how it was collected and the uses that it was collected for and which jurisdictions it's in. And so the interactions are really much more on a constant day-to-day basis. We've launched a new product. If you're looking to sell a car in certain states, you can sell it through CarGurus now. It's a great process. So the question is, hey, how do we connect with those consumers who've listed a car with us? Can we do this with the data? Can we do that with the data? So lots of great ideas, but they've come to understand that not all of it is free reign anymore. So it's much more interactive.
Was that the same for you, Andrea? Was it a progression over time where you saw more risk exposure or risk surface area with marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Being a lawyer in California, we're always on the forefront, right? So we were originally on the forefront with the California, website requirements, the CalCOPA, basically, where you already had to have sort of a website describing what you did, what you do with personal information. And so that then evolved with the GDPR. And of course, everything changed when that came out, and looking at privacy and looking at how marketing teams are using data and working a lot closer with legal at that time. So I would definitely put that as the apex of the change in the relationships between sort of legal and marketing teams, issues other than, of course, just branding and things of that sort. Yeah.
Does that mean when you join a company, maybe Kathleen, back to you, when you join a company, like what, not to ask their ranking, but like of the people you're meeting with first, I'm assuming marketing is one of the key
Oh,
teams.
yeah. And
Right
you
away.
need to have a really open relationship with your chief marketing officer and the VPs in marketing, and frankly, all the way down to the person who manages your email to consumers or whomever your audience is, because they're going to be doing things on a day-to-day basis, and you just want them to know that, hey, there's a legal resource here. Somebody's going to be quick and agile and pick up the phone and answer my question. Because a lot of times you need to be able to give an answer pretty quickly. Hey, we're about to launch this campaign. Can we or can we not? Or what are the risks if we do? Or what, data set should we use? So it's really nice to have built and established that trust relationship where they understand that if you're a good in-house counsel, you're willing to help, you're going to do what you can to help to grow the business, right? And not to get in the way. But I sometimes think that, marketers are going to push you appropriately, right? And say, well, why can't we do this? And why shouldn't we do this? And, so there's sometimes that push and pull of, can we, should we, right? I think sometimes our jobs as lawyers is also to say, we could, but should we? So I think that's part of it too. So you just have to build that trust relationship, because not every answer the lawyer is going to give you is going to be based on purely a legal basis. Sometimes it's going to be, well, we could do that, but what's going to happen to conversion rates, or what's going to happen with these other things? So I'm not sure that's a good idea.
That leads me to a critical point of the interaction with the marketing team. I think requires you as the lawyer to know a lot about your business in particular. And so I sort of wonder, maybe Pedro, from your perspective, over the course of your career, inside companies, how did you rapidly gather the knowledge about the underlying business and the ecosystem? Because to me, marketing hits so much of that. If you don't really understand your competitors, your partners, the marketplace, you're not the best lawyer you can be, in my opinion. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a great question. And like, how did I rapidly gain traction? Very slowly. It's hard. It's hard at the beginning. You accelerate over time, and your ability to like learn new things and like capture issues faster. But the beginning stages, I think, are slow, man. This is complex. And marketing is a big substantive area, right? Like, I live in like the digital marketing world all the time, right? Obviously. I work at Facebook, but at Salesforce, it's very similar. And then at Oracle too. But marketing is much more than just like, pixels and the digital ads, right? Like, it's like physical world marketing and TV and radio and, linear versus non-linear. I mean, there's all these different marketing channels, if you will. And so like being able to grasp all of those, I think, is impossible. So what I think like the natural trajectory is, and I'm interested in others' point of view on this, but like, at least what it seems to me to be is companies are small, marketing budgets are small, like, legal support for that can be a part of someone's portfolio. As marketing gets bigger and bigger, now you need expertise in marketing. Then you need expertise in specific types of marketing. And I'm talking about legal expertise. Then you need expertise in specific types of marketing. I have no idea like what the like parameters are of, like, for example, a TV marketing campaign. I have no clue. I can talk a lot about digital marketing and like the rules of the road there. And I'm sure there's some similarities, but there's probably some differences in some parts of each that are unique from a compliance and regulatory standpoint that like over time, I think like just as the marketing budget gets bigger, I think like the legal expertise, like bench has to get deeper.
Annie, I'm going to jump in on that because Pedro is, of course, 100% right. Your legal budget doesn't always allow that, right? So sometimes you've got to figure out like, okay, I'm going to do this brand marketing campaign and review this TV ad. And boy, my company's never done TV before. What do I need to do? And some of it is just sort of issue spotting, right? Like you're looking to see if there are other brands that are referred to. You're looking to make sure that, the statements that are made are 100% accurate. But boy, it's tough when you're thinking, hey, they're spending, millions of dollars on this TV campaign, and I'm not really confident I know what I'm doing. So you need to be able to say, hey, we've got to bring in outside expertise or whatever it is to make sure that, you don't under-resource these issues, because your budget doesn't always grow as quickly as the marketing budget does.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. I think one of the other things that's helpful is to have guidelines, right? So, as your marketing team grows, there's going to be a lot of areas that you can't touch on daily because there's so many different types of programs that are coming up. And so having guidelines, I think, helps from a legal perspective to say, hey, here's the things that we're most concerned about. Here's the buzzword. If this happens, talk to legal. If you're going to deal with this, talk to legal. These are, and then that helps your marketing team know when that they should ping legal as well. In addition, of course, to having like weekly meetings to catch up on what's going on, or having a strike team, or having your Slack messages and things of that sort. But I think that the teams like to kind of know what the hot buttons are, so that they also feel like more confident that they know where they have some free reign versus where they should make sure that they bring in legal.
How's it different? I mean, everybody on this call has a marketing aspect that is actually fundamental to their business, as opposed to like, I'm just marketing my company. Like our tech, has aspects that are marketing or advertising focused. So how is it different in that sense? Is it more of just, I need to understand the market really well, or what's maybe different if you have like a marketing product?
I think and I'll take a quick stab at this, but I think making sure you're consistent across both sides of that is really important. And so, for example, Facebook is in a position to create advertiser rules, right? Like making sure we take our own medicine is really important. And same was true at Salesforce, and the same was true at Oracle, right? Like you've got your own marketing apparatus for your own products and services, and then you sell marketing products and services. Like having consistent frameworks and consistent philosophies and consistent rules across those, I think makes for a more high integrity product, but also it's just easier to manage on a very practical level.
Yeah, jumping on that, it's interesting at 6sense, we have a product that helps companies determine who's in market to buy their products. And so it's a marketing and sales focused product, and we use a lot of big data and analytics to determine, who's doing what out on the internet. That shows from a B2B perspective some indicia of intent to buy. And our company was doing pretty well, but I will say that when our company started taking off was when we were very involved in using 6sense for 6sense. So actually using our product and understanding our product and developing those integrations. And what does our marketing team want? We listen a lot to our marketing team. And I think marketing teams can have a big influence on the success of a company if you listen to what the marketing team likes and incorporate that in your product or in how you do business. So we've had a lot of fun with that.
It's no different for Alice. Alice for Alice is something that we use in conjunction with 6sense. So it's they're very powerful tools together. To your point, Andrea, especially if you know that your team is going to do that and dig in on, okay, what is the tech doing? How does it work for us? And then to your point about playbooks and about guidance, sending that back to them, not just I think we're all going to be a fan of this statement, not just lobbing it over the fence and then backing away. Here's the information. Okay, now we're here, we're available. Let's talk about it. If these things come up, we're not going to be the department of no, we're going to be the department of let's get it done together safely. I think.
Yeah, and the marketing team has to be big players in developing those guidelines, right? It's more important if we start with, hey, what does the marketing team want to do, than what can we do that's in bounds, right? Because I might have a different answer if you say, hey, can we, do it by email, or can we do it by text, right? Those are two different answers, two different legal analyses. But, if the marketing team's really involved and is pretty open and transparent in saying what their objective is, we can do a lot better. And the guidelines are just going to be more on point, right? We're not looking to say no, we're looking to enable you to go do the things you want to do.
Can I just say how I just totally want to agree with using your own stuff is really important. I mean, it's so important. I sort of, at Oracle, I really didn't have that opportunity because Oracle's a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but just complicated. But at Salesforce, yeah, I use Salesforce marketing stuff to do Salesforce marketing things. And I learned so much about the inner workings of the product that I was able to be a better partner to the marketing team from the legal side because I knew how stuff worked. Totally agree with you, Andrea, 100%.
When I worked at TD Ameritrade, I did that too. And I'm not a trader, but I had enough, I put a little bit in there and I played around enough to understand, because that's really critical to understand how your product works, even if you're not an expert. And so we're not marketers, we're not marketing experts. We happen to know some things about the legal and data side of it. So like that definitely makes us better. To that end, what's the best way, like in your mind, for the marketer and legal / privacy to have like the very best relationship, like from your position?
Always say yes. No, I'm kidding. Always cave, Andy.
Always be productive. How's that?
That's right,
Provide
that's
optionality.
right. I
We
think
may
that's right.
not be able to do this, but have we thought about doing
Yeah.
this? You know,
Be an
so what are
enabler,
you
right?
trying to achieve, and how, you know, what is the importance of the various aspects of what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's right. Focus on the outcome that marketing wants to achieve, and maybe help them engineer a way to that outcome. Because their outcomes are always good, right? Talk about our products, like, get the message out. Like, their outcomes are never, hey, how do we destroy, like, this is not a marketing goal. And so marketing goals are always great. Focus on the goal and then help them build the path to Andrea's point. Like, might not be the path they asked for, but like get them down the road.
Yeah, we started a quarterly review. So I have some understanding of what it is they're trying to accomplish in the next quarter. And I review that the month prior to the quarter beginning. So I understand, oh, these are the big initiatives that they've got coming up for this quarter, just so I can lay the groundwork too, to say, okay, I get it. These all seem to be within bounds. Call me if any of these things happen. But oh boy, that brand campaign, that does seem like a big thing. Let me make sure that I've lined up resources on my team as well to help them out.
How do we give advice? And I'm asking myself this question too. How do we best give advice to the teams, especially when it comes to data issues, when we are like just in a dynamic environment in terms of the regulatory landscape in both the United States and globally? I know we're all for playbooks and all for kind of laying out the big ticket items, but to me, the big ticket items are blurry a lot of the time. So how do you talk to them about that?
Yeah, I think it is a conversation, right? It's making sure that your team knows as much as you know about what's going on and how you predict it might happen in the future, and just having that dialogue. And then also, I think working with folks like the companies like a OneTrust, or the types of companies that are going to help you enable some of these types of different changes in the law, and and so you kind of get the best practices across the industries, I think is helpful too. Facebook may be on the cutting edge. We're a step behind watching what the cutting edge is going to do in these areas. So, we're not trying to make the law. We're trying to make sure we, understand what, most big players are doing, how that's working for them, how we're going to implement it in a successful fashion, I think, is typically how we take the approach. And then obviously we use a lot of both the, in-house counsel advice, and then our experts from outside law firms for specific areas that make sense or that are potentially a little gray.
When did you? Yeah, go ahead, Kathleen.
Sorry. I was just going to say, Andrea, it's funny you mentioned it. It is helpful to hear, oh, our competitors doing this, or this is how Facebook has approached it. Pedro, you don't have the luxury of that being Facebook, but we get to say, what is Google doing? What is Facebook doing? How did Amazon approach this, right? And then it's easier to wrap your head around. You're like, okay, they're risk accepting this, maybe I can risk accept it. And why does that make sense? So I think if the marketing team comes and says, hey, our competitors are doing this, or the Facebooks and Googles of the world are doing this, then it does make it a little bit easier. So if they do some research and approach you with it, you're sort of like, it is hard to, sometimes you're like, that's just plain wrong. You can't do that. And, they've got a bigger legal budget than I do. But most of the time you're like, okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let me see how we can make that work.
It cuts both ways, right? Because Facebook has a lot of money and power and ability to kind of stake a position. We're all sort of, when it comes to a lot of these rules, it's important for the marketing teams to know, like, we're taking positions a lot of times I don't have a huge historical regulatory history to go look at and say, okay, well, I've got really good data here and I feel really good about a position. Sometimes this is the best position we can take on balance for things.
Yeah.
It's important that they know that, I think. When did you
Yeah,
all
I mean,
realize? Go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's funny being, I don't even know what to call like the position like the Facebooks and the Googles and the Amazons are in, but like I guess cutting edge or at the tip of the spear or whatever cliche.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. It's intellectually as a practitioner, right? It's like incredibly interesting, right? Like because we get to kind of create ideas a lot and make suggestions that are new or novel, and challenge notions coming from other places. And like you said, like their resources are there. If there's a principled position, you can advocate for it, whether that's through litigation or through whatever. I'll tell you this, and I've only been at Facebook about a year, but like it's also terrifying, man, because like it's as a person, I'm saying for me, like it's terrifying. Like I get asked questions all the time, and I'm like, shit, like my opinion, like it's in this small circle of people who actually make the decisions. I don't make any decisions. I have zero power at all times, and that's the story of my life. But I do have like a seat at an interesting tables where it's like if I have to be really careful about my notions and the things I share because they could become like operational, right? In the sense that like then like Kathleen and Andrea's companies are looking and like, oh, this is what Facebook is doing, and all it is like Pedro's goofy idea, which thankfully Facebook has a lot of vetting for my goofy ideas. But the point that you were making as a whole, like I think organizations like Facebook and Google and Amazon,
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Apple is not on board with any of this. Apple's listening to me and they're like, sorry, Pedro, you're wrong. But no, but like companies like Apple and Amazon and Facebook and Google, like I think there's an awareness of our position in the decision-making, rule-making space. And I think, at least in my experience, the people that are part of those conversations take it very seriously.
There have been times in my career when I'm like, oh, why isn't, I don't want to be the only person doing this. This seems like a great idea to me, but I don't see anybody else approaching it this way. So now, Pedro, I'll just call you.
Just call me. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're like, here's what we're going to do, Facebook.
Exactly.
Well, outside of watching what Facebook does, and I think this is important for our teammates to hear this kind of conversation, like outside of what Facebook is doing or Google or somebody, like I have found a lot of value in my network of GCs and friends and colleagues at a host of companies, big, small, whatever, because you need to pressure test ideas all the time. And Pedro, it's interesting, like it's no different in companies of our size, where if I have a crazy idea, that could definitely become real, like very fast. It doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't matter what the size of the business.
Yeah. No, I think it is interesting being an attorney in these times, or always, because there are so many gray areas, and you're so you do get to spend a lot of time sort of thinking through intellectually what's the right approach. And you can see what other companies do, and you may or may not take that approach. You could say that's a little riskier than we want to do, or we'd like to take this. But I do agree, Andy, that then being able to sort of bounce some of these ideas off, the resource groups that we're in, whether it's, our networks, et cetera, is always interesting and helpful as well.
I've found it incredibly invaluable.
Yeah, I think like obviously Facebook has a lot of people, and so did Salesforce, and so did Oracle, like dedicated to thinking about privacy, whether that's legal or policy or product or whatever. And there's a lot of internal vetting. But to the point you guys are making about external networks, often talking to folks who aren't drinking the company Kool-Aid is really important, right? Like people who understand the issues, who but aren't like inside the machine. To me, like Andy, like some of the groups we're in and some of the networks, like obviously you don't share like insider information, but just conceptual discussions about issues really inform like the positions I take at work. External conceptual discussions really inform the positions I take at work quite often, because people are just smart and know what they're talking about and aren't kind of jaded or aren't persuaded by like being internals.
During the lead up to the GDPR, like when I was at DataZoo, an ad tech company, we were engaged a lot with our most direct competitors. I mean, with the lawyers from those companies, and on non-competitive, non
Good lawyer caveats there, Andy.
Yeah, many caveats.
just on
I was like, we were talking a lot, but it's just about the curtains.
about our favorite restaurants.
Yeah. No, but your point is a really important one. Like, industry collaboration is not necessarily anti-competitive, and I think we should all embrace more of it and engage in as much of it as possible. Totally agree with you.
Well, I was thinking, with the GDPR, I remember when that came out, and I knew everybody was going to have their own form of DPA, right? And that's madness, right? Because then it's just a battle of the forms, and then you're spending all your time, everybody rewriting. And so, in times like that, it's great to have a standardization of approaches sometimes, right? And so you get a few law firms together and a few companies together and say, yeah, we all like this particular form better than these other ones. And then so now maybe 75% of folks are thinking, yeah, these are the standard things that follow the GDPR and that we're all going to see and we know are going to be good practice, and it's going to help deals go through more quickly. And so those types of things, right? You're not changing the law or anything, but maybe some standardization and approaches on things that do follow the law are going to help lawyers' lives, cut down costs for your company, cut down cycle time for your deals, et cetera. So I'm all in favor of those types of things when laws changes, and where now we have the new SECs, and people aren't going to know what that is, but standard contractual clauses, which folks will see in their companies, and a lot of requests for new types of agreements. It's nice if you can get some of that uniform across companies.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, for marketing teams to know that so much of this is judgment, right? The statute says, oh, you have to have an agreement between the parties to identify, and everyone sort of looks at each other like, okay, what's that going to look like? And you wait for everyone else to line up, and you're like, I don't want to pick Betamax if everyone else is going VHS, right? So how am I plan? And when you're dealing with consumers, if you get a consumer opt-out, you sort of want your opt-out to look like everybody else's, and you want the process to look like what everyone else is doing. So it's not that you're copying or cheating, it's just trying to standardize it so that, if your opt-out looks like everyone else's, then your consumer is confident that, okay, my data was treated the same way as it was treated by these other companies. So, yeah. But sometimes you don't want to, you don't want to end up being on the outside and doing something differently from what expectations are. It's not necessarily wrong from a legal perspective, but it just sort of sets expectations wrong.
Did anybody here have Betamax? A Betamax player?
No.
I'm not sure most people are old enough even to remember.
That's right. Half the audience is like, what are they talking about?
What is Betamax?
I'm old enough that my first VCR, it wasn't like you put the tape in, but like you pressed the button and a little thing popped up, and then you like pushed the tape down. Did you guys? I guess.
That was me. I had that.
Okay, good. So it's okay. I don't feel.
Yeah, that arm got stuck though.
That's right. The arm would get stuck. It's so true. Okay. Anyway, I digress. VCR talk.
As maybe a last question here, from a marketing perspective, data, etc., what maybe starting with you, Kathleen, what do you see if you look around the corner? Like, what do you see coming when you think about, okay, looking at what's going on in marketing and data? Like, is there anything you see from kind of a data legal perspective where you're like, I know this is gonna be challenging in the future?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about it.
I've got a
I
thought.
think there needs to be standardization to the point that Andrea was just making. I think there's going to be sort of an opt-in world, right? Like a centralized bureau where I can say, anyone in the US, here's Kathleen Patton, here's all my contact info. You can do these things with my data, right? I'd love to have that for myself personally, to say, anyone who markets to me, you can do these things with my data. You can't do any of these things with my data. I don't care who you are. And we can all go to that registry and see how Kathleen wants her data treated. I'd love to have that. I don't think federal legislation, by the way, around data protection is coming anytime soon, or privacy. So I think it's going to be something that's consumer driven.
I love that idea. It's be great.
It definitely has its advantages to do it that way. It has some disadvantages because I might want some companies to market to me differently than others, right? It just kind of depends. But to your point, maybe that could also be centralized, right? Like these types of companies, I'm interested. Like I love sneakers. Give me everything. I don't love, I don't know, whatever, hair products. I don't want to hear about it. Like this kind of thing. So super interesting. But I think you're right. I don't know that the environment, I don't think that. And ideally, it makes sense. I don't think we have the framework for it.
No.
Yeah.
Andrea, anything on your mind?
Well, I am hopeful we'll have some sort of federal regulation. One can, hope springs eternal. But I do think that will help. I know, we're all watching, state regulations. Fortunately for 6sense, we're in a B2B market, and a lot of the regulations are really focused on consumers where they should be, really. And but I would love to see federal regulation, and I think that would help all of us.
I love how hopeful both of them. See how hopeful their outlooks are. It's like we'd love to have some centralized understanding so consumers could have power, and we'd like clear rules that apply to everyone. It's so hopeful. I'm not optimistic, but I'll tell you, it's sticking with my theme of being negative. I see one headwind. I see a headwind that I hope we're all starting to focus on as like legal policy thinkers, which is as marketing becomes more automated and algorithm based, meaning like audience creation, delivery, measurement, all of the digital components of the marketing stack become more automated. Transparency, explainability are going to become, well, they already are important, but they're going to come under even heavier scrutiny and more regulatory pressure. I mean, we see this happening in Europe and in other jurisdictions already. I think anyone engaged in digital marketing is going to have to invest in making sure that like transparency, fairness, and explainability are at the forefront of like the design and build phase of all of this automated marketing, which is really where I think we're heading. It's going to be hard.
Yeah,
I guess is my point.
Yeah, I was reading some recent litigation, and it's all about the transparency, right? That's where it's all going. I agree with you, Pedro. Mm-hmm.
Explainability is tough though for algorithmic digital marketing.
I think we have to innovate there, and that's where we can partner with marketers, and we can partner with our teams. And I don't think there's enough innovation in the privacy focused, data focused interaction, whether that's consumer or B2B. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. All right. Thank you all. We'll wrap now. Thank you so much for joining us. You're the best. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. This was great.